It's like you need to accept that it's going to be more complex. But complex is beautiful, and it doesn't mean it's complicated. A temporary pasture for 3 to 4 years, integrated into a long-term crop rotation, it's a great way to control weeds, improve soil fertility, and reduce the use of herbicides.
Hi, Thomas.
Hi, Rafael.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thanks. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Really excited as well. You clearly have extensive experience in regenerative agriculture and in transitioning conventional systems into regenerative. Yeah. What would you say are the key lessons you've learned from those experiences?
Yeah, there could be many, but if we need to focus on the main ones, I think it's really about understanding complexities of any farming system. And then it's about time. So if you want me to dig a bit more and develop this idea or lessons, I think it's important when you want to transition or help transitioning a farming system to really consider any farm as a system rather than a linear or as a factory line, for example. It's interesting to see how today still many farms are managed as a factory line. You have input, and then you have a process, and you have an output, and everything is oversimplified, and we only look at optimizing any yield or cash yield without taking the point of view of, okay, but maybe it's also a much more complex system. And when you start doing that, and that's one of our lesson, I guess, it's you really start to see all the many aspects of a farm. It's positive and negative externalities, both on the ecosystems and on the economy. And I think it's a key element to integrate in any agronomical approach or managerial approach to be able to successfully change a system.
Okay. In the last 70 odd years, right? We simplified agriculture a lot, looking for gains in productivity, right? Efficiency. It kind of makes sense if you think about a factory. If you have a bigger factory with bigger machines, with one single line doing exactly the same thing, you have this economy of scale, you have this efficiency, and therefore you would be able to produce more for cheaper. That's the core idea, right? And what you're saying is that this idea doesn't quite work anymore, and we should look at more complexity?
Yeah, I think it might work for a few years, maybe one decade, a bit more. But thinking only linear most of the time leads to lack of profitability, soil degradation, which is one of the main topics we look at, or any other ecosystem degradation. While considering a farm as a complex system, really understand to look at all the aspects in a holistical way. Actually, the thing is, many people think complex means complicated, but it doesn't mean complicated. I think it's important to make the difference between something that is complex and something that is complicated. Complex means that you really consider all the implication around the systems, both positive and negative, and try to fix all of them together, rather than only optimizing one key output, which is yield or extraction of any output from the farm.
Yeah. To make this less conceptual, could you maybe share a specific story or a case study of a farm that you've worked with where you went from a simplified linear system to a more complex one to the benefit of that farm and the farmer?
Yeah, so I could probably take an example from Argentina. So we work a lot in Latin America since 7 to 8 years now, and we've been involved, in these very conventional large-scale cropping systems. And there is that one farm where we've been working actually for the last 5 to 6 years, and we started in a farm that was quite conventional, with a lot of main commodity crops managed under a very classical and conventional rotation. And they had some cattle and actually also a feedlot in the beginning. The owner hired us because she wanted to have a different approach and a different point of view in trying to improve mainly the impact on the ecosystem and the biodiversity of the farm. And we told her, okay, we can look at that. We should also look at the profitability. We should also look at how we can reintegrate all these different parts and making it actually more complex. And what we did is a step-by-step transition during which we started reintegrating livestock grazing into cover crops or grazing into short-term pasture, and these pasture were now somehow integrated into a long-term rotation plan, which was not the case before. This took some time in terms of redesign, in terms of understanding the local soil but also topographical context of the farm. But the result today is that you have a much more integrated system, much more complex. And we managed to reach quite a few interesting objective or results, like reducing the use of pesticide, use of fertilizer. And what is interesting is that at the beginning, the owner wanted to completely exclude livestock because she was seeing some being like a problem or a source of pollution. She was partly right, so we got rid of the feedlot, but we definitely kept the rest of the herd and the livestock because they are actually also a good tool and a source of many solutions for the farm, especially, for example, for weed control, because when you have a temporary pasture for 3 to 4 years integrated into a long-term crop rotation, it's a great way to control weeds, improve soil fertility, and reduce the use of herbicides.
Great. There are so many concepts in what you just explained that I want to go and dig into. And maybe we could keep using this case study to uncover all of that, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, you mentioned long rotations. So I guess when you come in to help managing a farm and changing the system to make it more regenerative, you have to redesign the rotation.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you want to make it long. First of all, how do you go about redesigning a rotation? What do you take into consideration when you do that? And why is it important to make it a long rather than short cycle?
Yeah, so it's really key to aim for long term. Because actually agriculture is about long term. We are managing ecosystems and any natural ecosystems, even though farming is artificial, it's part of an ecosystem managed by humans. And you need to aim long term in order to reach the objective, but also to develop some logical and meaningful succession of operation. There's no such thing as a 2 or 3 years plan when you talk about transitioning a farm. So the way we do is that we always start with what we call the cropping plan. So it's to put it simply, we start basically designing a timeline, and we represent the succession of the different crops that exist on a farm in every field, and we try to see over time, and usually we try to aim minimum 7, ideally 10 years or more. It depends on the context and the possibilities of diversifying the systems. That there's many aspects that come into action, but what I want to go is that once you start representing in a schematic way this crop succession, then you can start really considering the whole system. And what we do is trying to diversify as much as we can with other crops, other species, other botanical families, but also cover crops. in between the different cash crops. And the idea really is to make sure that for one specific field, over time, that field will have the most diverse crop rotation with different cash crops, but also the maximum soil coverage with cover crops or with temporary grasslands or pasture when you can play with cattle in a way. So it's a key element to start because now you have like a plan, and from that plan, many more specific and technical topics will follow. Because now you're going to talk about, for any crops, you're going to talk about fertilization and then weed control, crop nutrition protection, and then all the plan starts to unfold, and it's always a process that takes time. It's always a process that you need to review also over time. So it's key to aim for long term, but it's also key to remain somehow flexible and opportunistic. A good farmer in general, or good farm managers, remain flexible and opportunistic. So they have a plan for 10 years, but that doesn't mean that they cannot change even sometime on a last minute basis one crop and switch it with another one for economical reason, because suddenly the market is crashing, or for a climatic reason because they see the drought is coming and that maize won't go through the season, so I will replace it with something different.
Okay, so now we've sort of established our 10-year plan. We stay flexible. We know for sure that there are going to be some changes necessary now and then. But two questions I have. Why is it important to diversify so much? Why adding diversity? It sounds like it might be easier to just deal with a smaller number of productions. Yeah.
So I would say for two main reasons, if we want to keep it simple in an explanation, diverse is important for two reasons. One is if you want to regenerate soils, if you want to boost soil life, which is soil regeneration, you need plant diversity. And when we say plant diversity, is different species, but also different botanical families, because all these different combination of crops will really help the soil thrive, and the soil microbial life, fungi and bacteria, to really be able to develop with a much the most diverse source of rooting systems and plants, and any plants comes with its own ecosystem relationship with soils, and so diversity is a key. And when you actually look at nature, any natural ecosystems is diverse. So moving from a monoculture to a polyculture with diverse rotation is a key element. Actually, it's a core principle of regenerative agriculture, and it's a key element of soil health. And the second element, the second reason for diversity, is also economical resilience over time. So if you only look at short-term profit, maybe you will only aim for the main cash crops that are really working in the region as a commodity. It can be corn or wheat or soybean. But if you look at it on the long term, these markets are fluctuating. And one day, one of these main crops that you've been developing maybe on 90% of the fields will crash or will have problems in terms of market. And this is when you can count on a much more diverse portfolio of crop options, well, you are more resilient.
Okay, so makes sense. It's
that's the two reasons.
It's like investing in the stock market. If you just put everything into that one stock that's doing amazing right now and giving you a lot of gains, if it crashes for any reason, then you lose everything. But if you diversify and invest in a lot of different things, then if something fails, the rest is there to support the investment.
It's a very good comparison. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You talked a lot about livestock, right, and including animals on the rotation. The first thing you said was that we got rid of the feedlot. So what do you mean by feedlot, and why is that a problem for the farm?
So a feedlot is any livestock raising operation in which you basically feed the cattle with grains or with concentrated feeds or basically external feed or like without grass. Or there's always a part of grasses or hay, but it's a system where the cattle are kept in a stationary way and somehow artificially fed with concentrated feed, which generally comes with a lot of pollution in terms of manure accumulation and yeah, in that example, the reason why we got rid of it is the owner was not happy with that, and for many external negative externalities, smell, pollution, but also animal welfare. Any cows or cattle are made to roam the field and naturally select their food, which is basically natural grasslands. So yeah, feedlot is not always the best option in the farm.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite terrible, obviously, ethically speaking. But yeah, like as you mentioned, it's one stationary place where you have all of the animals packed together. It damages the ecosystem locally. It gets into the water systems and all of that. So it's really quite bad for the local environment. And on top of that, you feed them grain that was grown somewhere else.
Exactly.
That has all kinds of other environmental impact where it was grown. And so put all of that together and it's a bit of a disaster, really.
Totally.
And what happens then when you get rid of the feedlot? What happened to the cows now?
They are fully grass-fed, raised, so they only they are fed only with what is existing on the grasslands. So they basically rotate from one pasture to the other. And actually, in that specific case, what we've developed is what we call the holistic management grazing system, in which we basically focus on the pasture management itself, trying to maximize the resting time of any paddock. So a paddock is the one lot of a pasture, and the goal here is to maximize grass's production, but also make sure that the cattle can access to any paddock at the best time in terms of grass development and in terms of the natural cycle of the grasses, and that's why it's called holistic management, because you consider many aspects of the system. And again, holistic management is about planning. So you basically need, just like a cropping plan, you basically list all your paddocks and the different cattle herd you have on a farm, and you make sure that over time, the resting time of every pasture will be respected and optimized, so that both the forage, the grasses, but also the livestock just meet at the ideal moment and just optimize the whole system. This is quickly explained, but in that case, that's what happened. We stopped the feedlot. We put all the cattle in only in grassland, so it's only grass-fed beef. And
so you need grassland now. You had a farm. You were keeping your cows in feedlots before.
Yeah,
you didn't have any pastures. You were using that to grow crops. So now you need to.
They already had pastures in the past, but they were like separated from the cropping system. Mm-hmm. What changed now is that cattle are integrated into the cropping plan. So if you take any field on a farm, at some point if you take a period of 10 years, at some point any field will be covered with a temporary pasture of 3 to 4 years. Mm-hmm. So at some point, any part of the soil of the farm will meet pasture and cattle, which is really for us part of the cycle of regeneration. The key about pasture, and I think that's an interesting point to make, is why is it so important to us to get some grasslands in the system, is because a pasture is a perennial crop. It's a combination of plants, grasses and legumes that will have rooting systems that will develop over a year. Actually, we keep temporary pasture for 3 to 4 years, could be 20 years, but we try to play with this period of 3 to 4 years. And the opportunity of having these semi-perennial plants in a system really help a lot in terms of soil restructuration, because you have much deeper rooting system, but also weed control. When you come from a cropping field where there were so much weed pressure, and especially weed resistance, which is another topic, having a temporary pasture is like a shock, a natural shock of weed control, because now you have a very strong perennial rooting system and coverage. And then you have the cattle on top, which brings natural manure and natural fertilization also for the field. So that's really, to us, part of that transition system. Yeah.
And so once you're finished with these 3 to 4 years of permanent pastures, you've had all of these benefits to the soil. Do you keep that weed control benefit? Because I guess at some point you have to terminate this pasture. You have to replace it by a cash crop of some sort, right?
Totally. So after 3-4 years, we move back to a classical cropping rotation, which means we need to terminate the pasture. Generally, what we've observed is that, yes, the weed pressure has decreased, because during 3 to 4 years, the seed bank, the weed seed bank has decreased because they were unable to develop, or they developed, but then they were controlled and with competition from the grasslands. So the weed pressure reduced, is not as strong as in the beginning, and then it helped us to come back to a cropping system with less herbicide and a more normal weed control management.
Okay, yeah.
In a way.
I'd love to try and understand the economics of this, because in my mind, you went from having a cash crop every year to now having, in your 10-year rotation, 3 or 4 years where it's a permanent pasture. How does it work economically?
So it works because the goal is definitely not to maximize the yield anymore. I mean, of course, we keep the same yields, and we've been acknowledging that through these different transitions we've been managing. So generally, yield keeps steady. They can decrease a bit for some reason during the process, but the goal.
Sorry, you're talking about the yields of the cash crops.
Yes, exactly. Yes,
the cash crops. Yeah. But now you have 30 or 40% of the time where you're not growing a cash crop, so the total yields for the 10-year cycle is lower.
Yes and no. So first, during 3 to 4 years you have a cattle operation, this is making money actually. Okay, mm-hmm. Otherwise we would not do it. Properly manage. Especially holistically managed grazing operation is profitable if it's managed well. Actually, when you move to a conventional grazing system to a holistically based approach, you improve, and we measured that. First, you improve the stocking rate, so you can have more cattle per hectare. This is everything is allowed by the fact that you really optimize the moment when the cows enter any lots of the pasture, and then by maximizing or optimizing the stocking rate, you also optimize the weight gain. So basically, the meat production per hectare. So you're becoming more profitable in terms of cattle and meat production. And then the overall consequence over time, and again, it's important to understand and calculate this profitability impact or gross margin over more than 1 or 2 years, is because you now have better control on weeds, and you also have this integration with cover crops and then temporary pasture. The whole soil health is improving, and what we do at the same time is reducing pesticide, just as I said, but also reducing the use of fertilizer. All these inputs come at a cost, sometimes very important cost. If you break down the gross margin of any cropping operation, fertilizer and pesticides can aim to close to 50% of the direct cost in some case. If you can reduce that by 20% or more, thanks to all these new practices you are including in the system, well, your gross margin is sometimes improving. So it's one it's how do we say that, benefits and losses, but in the end, when you draw the bottom line, what we see is that it's remaining profitable.
Yeah, I guess it's absolutely key, right? Because it's going to be really tough to find farmers who, accept to work with you in management and accept the idea that their bottom line is going to be worse, right?
Totally.
So if you can demonstrate and prove that by doing all of these changes, you improve the ecosystem, you improve the resilience, the health of the farm and all of that, but you also improve the bottom line, it becomes very appealing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that there's no such thing as a farmer that accept to lose money, of course. I think it's a key element in any of our approach, and quite frankly, there's no decision we take in terms of practice change without considering the gross margin at some point. And it's always about, on one hand, I maybe create more cost with cover crops or with the new equipment. On the other hand, I will reduce cost on another side of the system. Again, that's why it's key to look at the farm as a complete system. It's not only one line or one simple effect. So profitability is key. We actually, as a company, we manage farms on a daily basis. So we have our hands on a daily basis in operations, and we are somehow paid partially on the yield of the operation. So we know what does it mean about profitability, and it's a key element on a daily basis.
So your income is dependent on the farmer's yield as well.
Yeah, in a way, yes. Yeah,
okay, that's interesting. So you have this extra incentive to make sure that the farmer is profitable.
Yeah, totally. So we provide farm management services, and the landowners or the farmers who hire us, they pay us partially on the gross margin or the profitability of the system. So that's why, as I said, profitability is a daily concern for us, because otherwise the system wouldn't work.
Yeah.
And
just a quick pause to tell you about the official partner of the Deep Seed podcast, and that's Soil Capital. Soil Capital is a company that accelerates the transition to regenerative agriculture by financially rewarding farmers who improve the health of their soils. They are an incredible company. I love what they're doing, and I'm super proud to be partnering with them for the Deep Seed podcast.
I've spoken to a lot of people who consider that you cannot be regenerative if you still use chemicals like herbicides, for example. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a key question, and I reckon it's a hot topic. Yeah. Which and I totally get that. I think that so to put it, maybe you can put it like that. I think that organic farming, if we consider removing any sorts of synthetic inputs or pesticides, organic farming is probably, yes, the ideal situation to reach in terms of environmental impact and human health and many other positive outcomes. But in a transition, what we see is that organic practices are not always the first step to take, or is not always the best solution to apply as a first step of the transition. Mainly because of weed control, sometimes because of plant nutrition and fertilization. But just to remind maybe everyone, organic farming is a system in which you remove any source of synthetic inputs, but then the system works partially also because there's subsidies and then a premium on the price of the crops that are sold. And the system in itself is great, and it's really nice if we can reach that. But these transitions are not always as easy if you cut off from one day to the other all these fertilizers and pesticides. So we prefer to take one case after the other and consider them in their own context. Actually, in Belgium. About half of the farms we manage are certified organic, and it works well. And the other half are not yet organic. Hopefully, they will reach the situation. But I think it can be tricky to systematically aim for going organic immediately, because you can end up in a tricky situation in terms of economics or in terms of soil health as well. What we've seen is very large-scale organic farms that was probably converted organic not only for environmental reasons, but also more for economical reasons. I was mentioning the subsidies or the premium on price. But then, for example, because of the lack of the impossibility to use herbicide, where they were doubling in tillage and deep plowing, which was, in that case, the only way to control weeds. Well, excess of plowing, excess of tillage is not really a good thing for soil. And we prefer to find a compromise and still use a minimum use of herbicide in some specific case, and then reduce as much as possible tillage.
Okay, it's a process.
Yeah, well, you really need to look at all the parameters on the dashboard. And if it is about soil health, sometimes I would say the conventional organic system is using a bit too much of tillage, and while Regen Ag really focus first on soil health rather than the suppression of pesticides and fertilizer. But don't get me wrong, one of the key pillars of Regen Ag is reducing as much as possible the use of both synthetic fertilizer and pesticides. So it's a key priority on our daily decision, of course. But again, gradual, step-by-step transition.
So when you're looking at your big 10-year rotation plan, you come in and also come and include all of these cover crops in between your cash crops, right? How do you choose what kind of cover crops, what kind of mix, when to plant it, how to terminate it? How do you make all of these decisions?
It's I would say multi-factor decision process. The key element to choose a cover crop is what is going to be your next crop. And there you try to first play with diversity. So as we said in the beginning, diversity is a key element. Diversity in time. That's why we mentioned long-term planning and trying to diversify over time the succession of crop and cover crop, but also diversity in space. So when we plant a cover crop, we usually try to have a mix of different species, 3, 4, 5, sometimes 10 species. If you can reach that situation. And it's not only about species diversity, it's botanical family diversity. So we try to have, if you have, for example, 5 species mixed in a cover crop, we try to have at least 3 to 4 different botanical families, because every botanical family comes with their own advantage and benefits.
Can you give us some specifics?
So the first and most important botanical family is legumes. Okay, the Fabaceae. The legumes are all these species that are able to fix nitrogen from the atmosphere naturally and basically increase the amount of organic nitrogen in the soil. So it's a huge source of nitrogen nutrition, but also a huge way to reduce nitrogen fertilization with synthetic fertilizer. So legumes are the key elements, and I would say in any cover crop, at some point you should have legumes. Then you have other botanical families, all the Brassicaceae, rapeseed, but also mustard are part of this family. They are great at restructuring soils with the deep rooting systems. So it's another lever that you are playing with. And then you have other botanical families. I mean, we could list a lot of them, but then you also look at foliar coverage and biomass production. So you basically try to fill your checklist in terms of biomass production, rooting systems, nitrogen fixation. You can also think about pollination and then have cover crops that will flower to attract pollinators. So, yeah, coming back to the questions, the way you choose cover crop is trying to maximize diversity, and then you need to look at the season. If you are going towards a cash crop, that will be a spring crop or a winter crop. In both cases, the cover crop will be different before. You want to look at how you will terminate that cover crop. Do you want to terminate it with a herbicide or with a roller? Do you want to terminate it in winter, in which case it's interesting to have species that will die with frost, because it's a natural way to destroy a cover crop is to leave it...
let it die naturally from cold.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes.
And then, so as I said, it's like a multifactorial decision process. There's the key element is that there is no one magic rule, and I would say every year you will probably have different cover crop, and that's why it's also key to remain opportunistic and look at all these different options and try them. And maybe one last element for cover crop is the cost of that cover crop, the economical approach. And obviously, it's sometimes like a problem in the discussion is the farmers say, yeah, okay, I'm happy with cover crops, but then I need to buy the seeds and I need to sow them. This is coming at a cost. Who's going to pay for that? And this is where we try to help him thinking, okay, but if you really go for long-term cover cropping in between any of your cash crop, maybe you should think about producing your own seeds of cover crop, because you have all the tools you need on your farm. And if you produce your own seed, which is not an operation so complicated because it's like your own internal seeds, you don't need a high standard of quality of just for seeding cover crop, then you reduce a lot the cost of these cover crops. You know, a good cover crop mix today in Europe can go up to €100 per hectare, maybe. I'm just throwing numbers. Well, if you produce these seeds yourself, you draw the cost almost by half. So, yeah, there's many options to play with that.
I spoke with an agronomist quite recently on the podcast, and he had an interesting approach where they would just seed a mix, cover crop mix, and then they would harvest the seeds of that mix. And depending on what the soil needed, certain species did better than the others. So you would have more of them in the mix the next year, and then that mix would be tried again. And that year, maybe some other species would do better, and so that you would have a mix that kind of evolves naturally with nature on your system. What do you think about that?
Oh yeah, that's a great approach. I would love that. Of course, it really showed this idea of being opportunistic and maximize all the tools you have in your Regen Ag toolbox, which in this case is a cover crop seed box. That makes total sense, and it makes me think about another idea or practice that we saw. We've worked a lot with an agronomist called Frédéric Thomas, who is a great, not only an agronomist but also a great farmer in France. And one of the practice he developed and tried is he tried to have, like he said, one seeding operation, 3 harvests. So in one season, he would seed 3 different crops, all mixed together during the same seeding operation. So you have the 3 species mixed in the seeder, and then successfully harvest these 3 species, but spread over time. And actually, in that case, it's rapeseed mixed with buckwheat mixed with clover. All of these crops not really compete with each other. There's always a bit of competition, but sometimes competition is good. But more especially, their cycle are completely different. So what happened is that the first crop who will shoot out and terminate is the buckwheat. It's a 2.5 month crop cycle. So you seed everything in August, and maybe in October, November, you already have a buckwheat harvest. You can make flour from buckwheat, all these. So the next harvest will be rapeseed after 8-9 months. That's a very long crop. And then when you've harvested the rapeseed, then comes the clover underneath the stubbles of the rapeseed. And with that clover, well, you can harvest clover seeds, or you can have a pasture for sheep, for example. So it's easy to explain right now in the podcast, but it actually worked. It took him a few trials, a few technical adjustments, but it's a great example of how to be opportunistic and play with a maximum of options.
Yeah. Also, I met a few farmers who said they don't ever plant a single crop anymore. They always plant 2 or 3 at the same time.
Yeah.
And I remember them saying, I don't understand why not more farmers are doing this. It's pretty simple. If you plant the right ones together and you have a seed separating machine, you can actually get much more production on your field, and you have 2 species that support each other.
Yeah.
I remember something like some kind of wheat with veg, for example, and it serves as a stick for the veg to grow, and the veg produces nitrogen, captures nitrogen. And I saw that and really wondered, why are we not seeing more systems like this? It just seems so obviously good.
Yeah, that's companion cropping, right?
Companion cropping. That's
this is how we call it, and we've been using that as well. It's super interesting. You have many combination possible. Peas with any cereals. You can also mix clover with barley. So the list could be endless. I think the key is to look at what we call the land equivalent ratio. And I think the reason why many farmers probably would not consider that automatically, would say, no, it's not going to work. It's because obviously if you mix 2 species, like you mix barley with clover, probably the net yield of the barley will be lower than a conventional monocropping barley. But the thing is that if you mix both of them together, if you have 80% of yield with the barley, and then you add the clover, which would yield after the harvest maybe only 40% of its yield, with both combined, you have 120% of combined land equivalent ratio yield.
So land equivalent ratio is the technical term.
Yeah, exactly. It's to take into account the compounded yield of both crops, which put apart are lower than a monoculture, but combined in one single season, well, actually you can reach better results.
But why would that be a problem for farmers?
So I think first, mainly probably is a technical adjustment, the experience, and you need somehow a bit of knowledge to understand, okay, how do you mix, what's the seed rate, what's the herbicide program. So it's more complex, it's more technical, and I think that would be probably the main first roadblock is how do you tackle such a new complex rotation when you've never done that.
It feels like everything we've discussed so far is are solutions that make the farm and the system better, more resilient, more productive, healthier, but they all involved more complexity. So like dealing with more complexity is kind of the central issue of making farm systems more regenerative.
Totally, yeah. It's the key. It's the key element, and I think it's like for agronomists, but also for farm managers, it's like you need to accept that it's going to be more complex. But complex is beautiful, and it doesn't mean it's complicated. It's just another way of probably spending more time in understanding what are all the collateral implications of any decision you take on a farm, because a farm actually is an ecosystem, and it has many sub-interactions that sometimes we don't see, we don't think about. And if you want to really tackle the whole transition, you need to be more complex. But again, it's not. I don't want to repeat myself, but it's not. Doesn't mean it's complicated.
Okay, but farmers have to juggle so many roles already, so much knowledge, so many tools. Like that added complexity, it's really, it might be a bit of an issue, and I would understand why. How do you solve that issue?
I think that the key element here is time. And the way we tackle that is that we try to create time space for the farmer in his management routine and operation, so that he can spend actually more time in thinking, learning, visiting other farmers, and being basically reassured that, okay, that practice is much more complex, but I've saw it, I understand, now I read it, I'm going to try it. And how do we create more time? Is to give a blunt example. For example, there are farms where plowing is a very classical operation that they would do every year. Actually, we saw some farms plowing 2 times a year, which is quite impressive. Plowing, so a tractor with a plow, is an operation that takes a lot of time. Okay, it's the field output is quite low, and when you have a farm of 100 hectares or 200 hectares, it's sometimes several days of plowing. If you switch from very conventional deep plowing systems towards minimum tillage or a more regenerative operation, one thing will happen is that they will spend less time on a tractor plowing and probably more time exchanging, learning things, visiting other farmers, and trying to reconnect with this new approach. I think, that's one idea that can work. Yeah,
they can also hire you. You have the knowledge, you understand the complexity, you can help them organize all of that knowledge and complexity, and can help them plan. Yeah. How does that usually work for farmers? Because I guess it's a service, it's an extra cost. So, how does it usually work?
First we work with. In Belgium, we work with landowners, and we somehow take almost the complete management of the farm, so through farm management services. So we are somehow on the deck and taking ourselves the decision for these farms, and we do that with our team. We are a team of 4 to 5 person on a daily basis doing that.
But you still have a farmer on the farm who's carrying out the operations, or is it someone from your team who's actually physically there doing it?
It's someone from our team, and we do that together with the landowner, who generally is someone who either don't have the time anymore or don't have the skill enough to do it. So we partner with the landowner, who is actually the farmer. So yes, to your question. And but what happens on a daily basis is most of the time we more and more take the decisions directly ourselves, and then we report to the farmer or the landowner on everything that has been done. Yeah. And we report at least on a yearly basis on all the aspects that have been developed, all the progress that has been made in terms of both economical but also environmental practices. That's really what we do in Belgium. And now abroad, it's more about consulting and strategic advice. And we work with different types of clients. First, we work with generally large-scale farming systems, so large-scale farm managers, or with corporate farms that either have problems or have the need to go into a transition towards regen ag. And we also work with investors sometimes who wants to develop new projects. And in that role, we play more a role of consultant.
Okay.
Yeah, strategic advice or technical support.
I'd love to focus back on the topic of farm economics. We've mentioned a few things already. We already said that one really important thing, obviously, is that the farm needs to be profitable and more profitable when we transition to regenerative agriculture. You mentioned that transition comes at a cost. You have to invest in seeds, in machinery, maybe courses, I don't know, maybe hiring an agronomist.
Yeah.
So now I'm interested in looking at the other side of the balance. Where can you save money?
Yeah. key question, of course. I think what the answer to that is that we play with all the different tools that are available in the RegenAg toolbox, with what we mentioned before, so minimizing tillage, cover crop, etc. But we also try to focus a bit more on I would say, classic agronomical tools that are not especially regenerative, but that, funny enough, is sometimes missing in many farms we look at. If we talk about, for example, the use of pesticide and the reduction of pesticides globally in a farm, so reducing cost, or put it that way, reducing pesticide will automatically imply a reduction in cost, in direct cost, which means improving the gross margin. How we reduce pesticide, I've already mentioned all the cover crop, etc., but there's other way to do that. And a key element here is what we call spraying optimization. And there, what we will do is really focus on all the methodology and process and condition of really the application of herbicide on a crop. And it's amazing to see the result you can get and the improvement that can be reached when you focus on that. And the reason is that, well, basically, the effect of any herbicide in terms of weed control, well, up to 75% of that effect is related to the condition of application and not to the chemical itself. So, in other way, to put it differently, if you spray the best chemical you have with a bad condition, which can be too much wind, too much dry air, or not enough pressure. I mean, there's a whole list of parameters there. You can really lose all the efficiency, which means you will need to apply a second time, and you will need to put more herbicide. So what we do there is to train the farmer to improve the spraying condition, and we do that by focusing on the weather condition, especially the air humidity, the pressure and the speed, the type of nozzle he will use on the sprayer, the type of mix you have in the tank, the additive you can add. I mean, there's like an endless list of many tools you can use. The quality of the water as well that is used on a crop. All these aspects are key, and what we see is that you can reduce 20, 30, 40% of the amount of herbicide with the same result, only playing with that optimization. So it's one of the key elements. Another one, in terms of cost reduction, is focusing now on tillage. So we've already discussed all this idea of going towards minimum tillage. It's not always easy and not always possible to switch to no-till directly. Okay, it's quite of an important step. But what we try to do is at least encourage the farmer to switch from deep plowing systems to minimum tillage. And one interesting fact here is that we've acknowledged over time that any centimeter in depth of plowing that you can reduce will make the farmer at least in Europe, will make the farmer saving around €5 per centimeter per hectare. Okay, which is can be significant, because if you switch from a very conventional deep plowing system at 35 centimeters and you move to 10 or 15, which is considered minimum tillage, depending on what type of implement and tines, etc., and discs. But this reduction in depth is directly translated into reduction in cost. And the rule is €5 per centimeter. And we say €5 because it's not only the fuel of the tractor. So obviously, the deeper you go, the more power you need, the more fuel you will consume. But it's not only about fuel, it's about fuel, tractor maintenance, equipment maintenance, any plow, any plowing to implement needs maintenance. It's the salary of the driver or the farmer himself. I mean, all that compounded together is a significant cost that you can save on a farm.
Yeah, so you said from 35 centimeters down to like 10?
Yeah, 10 would be already a
Even
big progress.
15, let's say.
15.
That's already 20 centimeters, so that's 20 euro per
20
hectare.
times 5.
Times 5.
Yes, which is
yes,
100
times
euro.
5 euro.
Yeah. Mechanization cost in conventional broadacre crops is 400, 500 euro per hectare in Europe. Say France, Germany, Belgium, which is huge. It's almost 50% of all the direct cost of the cropping operation. So if you can reduce from 400 to 300, you save 100 with what I just explained. It's quite significant. Actually, you can reinvest these 100 euro into cover crop seeds. And you can do a lot of great cover crops with 100 euro. Right. So it's a bit how we play, and we try to tackle these extra costs and keeping the gross margin steady. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've had so many really interesting conversations since I started this podcast, and it seems obvious to me now that regenerative agriculture is such a better way of farming than the extractive, linear, conventional system. And I've had people here demonstrating over and over that actually regenerative farming can be a lot better for ecosystems. Obviously, that's the point. Better for soil health, for water, for biodiversity, and all of that. It can be more profitable for the farmer, and it can produce healthier, more nutritious foods for the consumers. So it's like a win for the farmers, it's a win for people, consumers, and it's a win for nature and for society as a whole, right? And I keep wondering this question then, why are we not all doing it? Why isn't everyone rushing to do it if it's so much better?
Well, I think probably because farm managers or landowners are still focusing too much on short-term profits, which we all understand, of course. We are in an economically driven world, and the fact of focusing on too much on short-term doesn't help to develop a real, meaningful regen ag transition, because it's really about long-term. And long-term doesn't mean that you will lose profitability. It just means that the farmer or the landowner needs to set himself into another pace for that transition. So probably the answer is that focusing too much on short-term is one of the reasons. The other reason maybe could be the lack of understanding complexities, and the fact that too few people consider farming as a complex system rather than a linear factory, I guess. So, I think that's somehow the main reasons.
We came back several times in this conversation on the topic of complexity. It's a key aspect of farming with nature, with complexity. What do you think about the role of technology in helping farmers deal with that complexity?
Well, I think technology has a role. Yes, there are many very interesting technological innovations on the market and on a yearly basis that are arriving, that are super interesting. I just think that it should not be the main focus, and I don't think you can really solve a regen ag transition only using technology. It's also and probably mainly about system thinking and developing long-term strategy. All this brainstorming about crop rotation and using all the different toolbox about the regen ag principles. But still, there are fascinating technologies nowadays that are arriving. all the topics around precision agriculture is something that is really helping in terms of if you want to reduce fertilization, then today you can really use what we call variable rate application. So you focus on both the yield maps of the farm. So any harvester today can record the yields of any place of a field and produce a map and show you where you get the best yield and the lower yield of a farm.
As you're harvesting, it's measuring kind of live how much you're harvesting from each different parts of your field.
Exactly.
And then creates a map and that shows you where you're yielding more or less.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
yeah,
cool.
And it's always super interesting because you learn so much about, okay, why do I have this now, this part of the field that is harvesting, so like sometimes a third of the rest of the field. Then you start asking questions and searching and looking for many ideas. But you can do more than that. You can merge these maps with a soil map, and then you can add some what we call NDVA, which is basically satellite imagery information from remote sensing. It's a whole process in terms of mapping and database integration, but then in the end you have basically a map of the yield potential of your field. And heterogeneity is the key here, because there's no such thing as a farm or a field that is completely homogeneous. It's always heterogeneous because you have soil depth, you have soil composition, you have many aspects. When you can take that into account into your fertilization plan or seeding rate, you really optimize both the plant nutrition, but also the cost, basically, of your operation. So you would, in a place where you have more fertile soil, maybe you would put less fertilizer, and the other way around. The same for seed density. If you have a part of the field that have a lower potential because the soil is more shallow, well, that you will reduce your seed rate there to limit the risk. All that, in the end, you really make a big difference in the gross margin of the operation. So that's technology brought to helping transition, yeah.
I can really imagine some kind of AI farm manager assistant or something like that could then collect in real time all of that data, create these models, and help on a day-to-day basis the farmer to make the right decisions on what to do on the farm to maximize his production.
Yeah, I guess, now the whole AI thing will come in big time, I'm sure, to boost all these technological approach. Actually, in terms of AI, a fascinating technique that I found really interesting is the development of mechanical weed control, which is a very interesting alternative to herbicide. So now, today, with image recognition, which is AI, a camera is able to... So you put a camera on a mechanical hoe. So a hoe is a tool that you draw behind the tractor to kill the weeds by cutting the roots, okay? Put it in a simple way. But now you have medical system in which you have cameras with image recognition, and actually the cameras are able to identify the weed from the cash crop. And it will directly adjust the hoeing position or the harrow position to remove the weed and not the cash crop. So in one mechanical pass, you can reach nowadays 80-90% of weed control without any herbicide, and almost at the same cost of a spraying operation, because now they reach speed and efficiency and size that is really amazing, and everything is made possible thanks to technology and image recognition. Yeah,
that's something you attach onto the tractor.
Yes,
and so you're passing with the tractor, and it's automatically recognizing the weeds.
Exactly.
And just so you can just cut the weeds. Or take them out, but not touch your That's
one.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, the most fascinating I saw recently was in a sugar beet field, and you had a mechanical weed control tool with say a kind of a knife that is uprooting any weeds. But as soon as the knife arrives close to the sugar beet, it just move away to avoid damaging the sugar beet, and then come back again for the next weed in the furrow.
Okay.
This is super efficient, and it goes from far. The tool and the tractor goes quite slowly, but when you are close to the operation, it's super fast, and everything is made possible with a set of cameras and.
That's impressive, yeah.
So very technological, but it's a great way to. Actually, it's an organic farm that was applying that. So.
But then now we can sit here and probably think about 100 different amazing ways technology and artificial intelligence could help a transition to regenerative agriculture. But what I'm worried about is that it can also help conventional farmers be even more conventional, even more intensive, get even more finite resources to produce more on the short term, right?
Yes, indeed. But I think... using technology is great, but if soil health is not the main focus, in the end, I think this conventional farm will run into problems again. So if technology is used to basically solve the global transition towards regen ag and really restore soils, then it's a good thing. If it's used to push forward and being more intensive and less regenerative, well, in the end, I think it's a dead end somehow.
Yeah. If you could make one change to European farming policies that would have the biggest impact, what would you choose?
Good question. Only one change. Sorry, I would probably focus on compensation system that would help the farmer or push the farmers covering their soils much more and using more cover crops. I know it's already existing in a way in the second pillar, but we could do much more than that, and I think it should be a core part of the policy. So.
To help the finance cover crops.
Yes, better. Cover crop and
it's such a key aspect of the.
Yeah, I think if I had only one change to do, I would probably focus on that. Yes.
What's the most damaging myth that you hear in debates about regenerative agriculture?
I'd say that probably that the regenerative agriculture is not profitable. I think it's the. To me, it's wrong, obviously. Otherwise, we would not be doing that. And there's many examples or many ways to demonstrate that it's profitable. So I think it's quite of a strong myth, and it's always interesting to discuss about that.
Yeah, right. And following up from that, there's the question we hear a lot, which is, can you feed the world with regenerative agriculture?
Yeah, well, my answer is obviously yes, you can feed the world with regenerative agriculture. Not only because regen ag to us keeps the same yields and output than a conventional system, but
even a little bit more sometimes if you use the variable, what was the term again?
Land equivalent ratio.
Land equivalent ratio. Yeah, I need to write it down.
Exactly. Yes. But I think really this whole myth again about feeding the whole population is really a wrong question, because first. It has been proven many times, and we know today that food production is spoiling a third of feed production. So we lose a third of the production through
waste.
Yeah. Sorry. So I think the real problem is not the practices, is the food system first. Second, there is still plenty of land available and countries that are underdeveloped and that can put these farms into production, especially in Africa, for example. And then third, and I think that's the most interesting topic, is that when you mention food production, then I think we need to pay attention to food quality as well. And regenerative agriculture has proven now many times that food quality is much more interesting than in conventional agriculture, especially here talking about nutrient density, caloric production per hectare, or protein level content. All this is really interesting, and if you come back to these essential criteria about food and feeding the world population, I'm convinced there's not any problem at all with regen ag.
Yeah. I really love that last point. It's true that we have a tendency to measure in weight, volumes,
Exactly,
or in calories even.
Yeah.
We forget that the nutrition that we need to live, to thrive.
Yeah.
And if you can have more nutrition per volume, that's an important variable to.
Yeah, it's so obvious, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the difference between green water and blue water, and why does it matter?
So there you talk about water cycle, and green water is, don't get me wrong, is the whole water that is coming into a system naturally. So it's basically rainfall. So if you consider a farming system, the green water is the rainfall that is feeding the crops or the pasture of the system. The blue water is any water that is used coming from a river, a well, an aquifer, or a lake. So it's actually water that is being pumped and that is being used somehow in an artificial way. If you run the water balance or the water footprint of a system, the green water sometimes will be the most important, but it's actually not really the one that is affecting or damaging the ecosystem, because it's a water that will anyway fall on the grasslands or on the crops, no matter what is being organized as a practice. The blue water, on the other hand, is directly linked to the practice you develop. So if you irrigate, you use blue water. If you are less efficient in any of the farming practices, it's most always about blue water.
Yeah.
And then you have the gray water, which is the wasted water or residue water from the residues. Yeah.
I saw a post on LinkedIn you made a while ago about the water footprint of beef, and we often hear this number that's what is it, a kilo of beef meat requires 15,000 liters of water.
Yeah, it's a bit misleading, right? And again, it's a hot topic, and sometimes we get into trouble when we discuss that. But it's also very interesting. I think here, 15,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilo of beef. It's actually the vast majority of that amount of water is green water, which means it's rainfall falling on the grasslands of the farm where the cows have been raised, which is not super logic to me to integrate into the calculation, because this is water that will fall anyway, no matter what you are doing on that land. Is it fruits? Is it crop? Is it cattle? It's gonna fall. So it's a statistic to me that is misleading, and that is missing a lot of the real context. And I think it's driving the debate away from the main topic to me, which is how is the cattle being raised. And now I think this is how you make the difference between grass-fed cattle, which is to me the best way, so 100% grazed for the animals, versus feedlot or grain-fed cattle. In a grain-fed system, the amount of blue water and gray water is almost double compared to a grass-fed beef, for example.
So the types of water that actually do matter, that are limited, that we could use for other things that are maybe more important, than is higher with the feedlot.
Exactly. Sometimes up to double. Yeah. I think that statistic is sometimes a bit very easy to share and to create a debate, but it's misleading. Yeah.
What's one achievement you are most proud of, or one story, one moment in your career that made you very proud?
Well, I think it's the result we managed to reach with that large-scale farm in Argentina, and we did that as a team, of course. So involving a group of 4 to 5 agronomists and a whole diversified team. But we managed to convert that farm from a conventional system to a really regenerative ecosystem with natural reserve cattle integrated with crops. cropping system in which we manage reducing not only fertilizer but also the use of pesticides, maintaining gross margin and profitability, definitely. And yeah, I think to us it's always a project, and to me especially, that we love to mention and to discuss. Yeah.
Do you have any specific numbers you can give us to give us an idea of the scale of the operation, the reduction in certain uses, the profitability aspect and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's roughly a 4,000 hectares farm. I would say half of the area is used by cattle with permanent grasslands, so part of the farms that are not fit for crops, but also temporary grasslands and pasture. And the other half is crops. And there's a rotation with quite of a classical rotation in the region with maize, soybean, but also wheat, barley, sunflower. And now some numbers that we managed to reach is that today any field is covered, or at least 80 to 90% of the fields are covered all year round, thanks to first cash crop, but also cover crop or temporary pasture. We managed to reduce, and that's a significant achievement, what we called the environment impact quotient. It's a very interesting indicator that look at pesticide impact on the environment. It has been developed in the US by the Cornell University. We love that indicator because it takes into account the whole set of impact on the environment, including all, birds, fish, biodiversity, insects, soil, insects, but also impact on human health of any active ingredient of a pesticide. So we run this calculation over the whole set of spraying application of any field and any crop, and we managed to reduce by almost, if we take the result globally of the whole farm, including pasture, which basically don't use almost any herbicide, we reduced by almost up to 75% this environmental impact quotient compared to the neighboring farm.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's an amazing way to highlight also how we shouldn't always let perfection be the enemy of good, because I and you see this as a 75% reduction, which is already an amazing improvement. Some people will say, well, it's not 100%. There's still some negative impact, right? But I think it's an amazing example to show that you can actually have a huge positive impact, and the sky's the limit from there, I guess.
Yeah, totally. I think.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Thomas. It's been a great conversation. I loved it. And
thanks.
Take care.
Likewise. Super exciting. Thanks for having me here in the podcast.